This could harm countless more children. IVG. What the heck is that? China has been working for some time on artificial wombs. They want to be able to implant babies into artificial uteruses so women never have to give birth, which will just lead to factory farms of children who can be used to get their organs or whatever kind of insanity they want to do. It's not fair to the gay couples because they can't create children. It's like, oh no, it doesn't work. This is breaking news, and almost no one is talking about it. Have you heard of IVG? Today, I'm exposing a new technology that creates eggs and sperm from human stem cells. What does that mean? It means that children don't need a mother and a father to create them. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. 15 years ago, if someone told you people are cutting off their genitals to pretend they're the other gender, what would you say? I'll bet you wish we exposed transgenderism much earlier before it became mainstream, huh? The same thing is happening right now in the world of big fertility. It's happening again. And people think it's too crazy and too fringe to become the norm. When will we learn our lessons? Let's get into it. Give us a rating and review. Help us reach more people. I love reading your reviews. You go to iTunes or Spotify, hit 5 stars, and then on iTunes, write in a little endorsement, your thoughts, a question. Follow us on Rumble. Go over to Rumble and hit subscribe on my Rumble channel because YouTube has played fast and loose with this show before. And on YouTube, hit the notifications bell so you don't miss when we publish a new episode. And join us at the White Rose Resistance to tear down the high places as we mobilize the local church with our resistance chapters around the country, with our new film coming out to mobilize and awaken the church to develop righteousness in their communities, right? And show up against evil agendas. We've got resistance chapters popping up all around the country now. We've shut down a couple abortion mills. Praise God. We believe that unless the church flatulent becomes the church militant, it will become the church irrelevant. This has always been our job. If that matters to you, we do need your support. Go to thewhiterose.life, www.thewhiterose.life, and join as an ally at $35 a month. Okay, you get your battle box in the mail to equip you for the fight, and you log in on our White Rose app to have community, updated news, live calls, pro-life apologetics, activism curriculum, pro-life, pro-choice dialogue, debates. And if you join at Air Support, $70 a month, you join our Books in the Barracks book club. The next book we're reading is Christianity and Liberalism by J. Gresham Machen from 1923. It's going to rip your face off. We need your help. Sign up as an ally. Let us know what you think about the show. Let's get into it. This is The Seth Gruber Show. It's the wild, wild west of biotechnology. Almost no one is talking about this right now. I think I've just heard our beloved friend Katie Faust mention this. This is horrible news. In the war on children, it's hard to think of another development in recent memory, and by that I mean the last 10 or 20 years, that could be more damaging and demonic than this. Yes, and I even am including in that the Drag Queen Story Hour and the absolute trans-surgical insanity. This could harm countless more children than gender ideology has ever done. And almost no one's talking about this. You need to send this to everyone. You've heard of IVF, but maybe you haven't heard of IVG. What the heck is that? I'm not a biologist, so I might struggle on the pronunciation, but I know exactly what's going on in the process. It's called in vitro gametogenesis or gametogenesis. The senior author of this study and experiment at the Oregon Health and Science University. His name is Shukrat Mitalipov with a PhD. So he follows the science, so you can trust him. He said, we achieved something that was thought to be impossible. He's the director of the OHSU Center for Embryonic Cell and Gene Therapy. He said, nature gave us 2 methods of cell division, and we just developed a third. What does this mean? Where is this going? It means, guys, that they are now developing functional eggs that would be female oocytes from human skin cells. What are they doing? What does this mean? We'll get into all of it, but let's just put it this way. Babies can be created with 2 daddies and no mother. That's what this actually is going to end up meaning. Oh, but don't worry, they'll promise it as a way to help infertile couples be able to have babies with, his skin cell if he's infertile. But this is going to turn demonic in 1 year, in months, whatever. As soon as they're able to do this consistently. In vitro gametogenesis, IVG, not IVF. And by the way, like, how much do we talk about on this show? I mean, this has been the basis of my church tour for the last several months that we're kicking off again in January. Life or Death Tour, but really the title is All Human Conflict is Ultimately Theological, but that's too long of a title for a tour. Is that all of these culture war issues, the war we see going on all around us, the war on the family that primarily rears its head when it comes to children. Have you noticed that? It's like, show me something that the left loses their flipping minds over that doesn't involve children. Show me something that the left doesn't lose their ever-loving minds over that doesn't have in some way a connection to children. It's always been the war on the children. But that most of all of these issues are a war against human nature itself. It's just a war against the way the world is made. Like, it's as if the leftist, secular, sexual, titillate the masses, moral revolutionaries are saying nature is a bigot. It's not fair that there's only 2 different forms of genitals and 2 different sexes. And that when coitus happens, it's so unitive and comprehensive and powerful that sometimes 9 months later it requires a name. That's not fair, because Pete Buttigieg, he wants to be both mommy and daddy. It's not fair to the gay couples because they can't create children. It's like from the Office. Remember that scene? Oh no, it doesn't work. That's not fair. So we're gonna remake ourselves in our own image. That's the trans cult, literally remaking themselves in their own image, like not metaphorically at all, like literally. The trans demonic revolutionaries want to remake themselves and the children in their own demonic image. Transgenderism offers an alternative creation story. Rather than accepting the Imago Dei on God's terms, He made them both male and female and blessed them, said it is good. We say, no, actually, we're literally going to remake ourselves. We're going to chop body parts off. We're gonna mix and match skin and take a bunch here, and so you have a big missing chunk of skin. We're gonna use that to make an artificial phallus, so that this young gal who thinks she's a boy can have male parts. Like that is happening in America and has happened. That's not hyperbolic. That's not like one extreme case to make my point. That has happened and is happening. Like, that's literally an alternative creation story. This IVG is the most gnarly demonic, and transcendent attempt to be God that I have ever seen. And there's a lot of weird playing God that happens in the 21st century culture wars, isn't there? It reminds me of something Camille Paglia said, very famous radical feminist, abortion advocate, cheerleader like nothing you've ever seen before. Lesbian at one point, and then I think she said a few years ago she's trans now. So anyways, she acknowledges that nature has made us male and female. And nature's a bigot, but it did speak authoritatively. Nature, of course, meaning God, has made us male and female, and that humans are a sexually reproducing species. She acknowledges this. But then Camille Paglia asked the question, why not defy nature? She says, fate, not God, has given us this flesh. We have absolute claim to our bodies and may do with them as we see fit. C.S. Lewis once said that the power of man to make himself what he pleases means, as we have always seen, the power of some men to make other men what they please. Let me say that again. That is one of the most prophetic statements from any writer or speaker in the 20th century. One of the most prophetic lines that C.S. Lewis has ever written. For the power of man to make himself what he pleases means, as we have always seen, the power of some men to make other men what they please. This sort of Promethean impulse that if you are God and can remake yourself in your own image, if you have absolute autonomy and claim to do whatever you want with your body, where that always ends up is man playing God in recreating others in their own image. Just last time we had Nolene Cedra on the show. Do you remember this? Fascinating conversation with our friend Nolene Cedra. I quoted to her this line from this crazy feminist, and I'm forgetting the line right now. I had it pulled up at the time, but that the romantics believed that the way to change culture was to go back to the beginning of culture and to rewrite it. Go back to Genesis. Rewrite the origin creation story. That's what's going on with nearly all of our culture war issues that target the family. And that is a perfect example of IVG. Now that we have given ourselves free sex, free abortions, taxpayer-funded trans surgeries, now that we have the power to make ourselves what we please, we will now make others what we please as well in order to transform society. And of course, it's always children, isn't it? Is it not always children who are the first victims of the secular progressive moral revolution? Here's a line from this article at OHSU. If you'd like to go read it. Again, this is the Oregon Health and Science University. And of course it's Oregon, right? Of course it's Oregon. Oregon is like, what? Weren't they the first state to like legalize doctor-assisted suicide? They're one of the like absolute leaders in abortion. One of the first states to be doing full-blown third trimester abortions. I think some of the biggest like occult circles and like witchcraft cults are in Oregon. Here's a line from the article. Instead of attempting to reprogram induced pluripotent stem cells into sperm or egg cells, a process that can take months or even years, researchers at OHSU are using a technique based on somatic cell nuclear transfer. SCNT. I've talked about this on the show before. The technique involves transplanting a skin cell nucleus into a donor egg stripped of its nucleus. So they take a female oocyte. That's right. You ladies listening, your eggs, right? Like what enables the sperm and egg and new life, baby. Take a woman's egg, remove its nucleus, and put a skin cell nucleus there, and you could potentially create a clone. And they did this in 1997 with a sheep, by the way. Do you remember that Scotland famously reported this technique? I was 6 years old, but some of you guys might remember this, to clone a sheep named Dolly the sheep. That was done with somatic cell nuclear transfer. In that case, researchers created a clone of one parent. In contrast, the OHSU technique resulted in embryos with chromosomes contributed from both parents. OHSU reported the three-step process to this as follows. Here's what they're saying, how they're doing this. Researchers transplant the nucleus of a skin cell into an egg or oocyte stripped of its own nucleus. Prompted by cytoplasm within the donor egg, the implanted skin cell nucleus discards half of its chromosomes in a process similar to meiosis. This is the key step, resulting in a haploid egg with a single set of 23 chromosomes rather than 46. Researchers then fertilize the new egg with sperm through the standard process of IVF, in vitro fertilization. This created a diploid embryo with 2 sets of chromosomes, which would ultimately result in healthy offspring with equal genetic contributions from both parents. I don't think I have to explain to the listeners of this show where this ends up. The article continues as researchers reported that they had produced 82 functional oocytes that were then fertilized with sperm through IVF. Notably, most did not progress beyond the 4 to 8 cell stage and displayed chromosomal abnormalities. A relatively small number, 9%, developed to the blastocyte stage of development 6 days after fertilization, when embryos are typically transferred to establish a pregnancy through IVF. None were cultured beyond that point. So 9% of the 82 functional oocytes that were fertilized developed to human beings. Meaning conception literally occurred. They said developed to the blastocyte stage of development 6 days after fertilization. Author Nuria Martí Gutierrez, staff scientist in the OHSU Center for Embryonic and Cell Therapy, said research will continue to better understand how chromosomes pair and separate faithfully to create oocytes with the correct number of chromosomes. Embryos typically won't develop if they have too many or too few chromosomes, a condition known as aneuploidy. The author I cited earlier, Shukrat Mitalipov, noted that even in natural reproduction, only about 1/3 of embryos develop to blastocytes. Aneuploidy is a pretty common in human eggs, especially with aging, he said. Researchers noted that the publication represents a scientific milestone, but that much remains to be done, listen to this, before the technique would be ready to establish a pregnancy in people. Who sees it? Who could finish the show right now? Why did they not use the word woman? Why did they not use the word female? Let me read that to you again. Researchers noted that the publication represents a scientific milestone, but that much remains to be done before the technique would be ready to establish a pregnancy in people. In people? Do you mean women? Same pronoun patty cake that all of the logogogues and lexicographic molesters have been engaging in for the last 5 years or so when they talk about pregnant people or people with uteruses. They're telling you where they're going. All of the radical leftists, both in the academic world in the ivory towers and the violent revolutionaries on the streets and the idiots who fund them, have been intentionally erasing women for years by trying to make them unnecessary. Guys, you're not going to want to miss Life or Death Con in Washington, D.C. Watch this.
The problem is way less the gay communists and the butch feminists majoring in lesbian dance theory who want to throw you into gulags until you say abortion's healthcare. That's not really the main problem. The main problem is the blood-bought bride of Christ who ought to know better, who is silent and asleep in the light.
As go evangelicals, so goes conservatism.
The problem is that I don't even think the pro-life movement at this point actually sees abortion as murder.
This is not a healthcare issue. This is a gospel issue.
We have made offending our neighbor worse than offending God.
And it was Christians who ended every single human rights abuse. Christians have always been at the forefront.
To win a nation, you don't storm the castle, you control the countrysides. You control the home, the family, the local church.
So guys, mark your calendar, okay? Are you fired up with me? Are you going to join us? Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. January 22nd, 2026, Washington, D.C. for the second annual Life or Death Con. This is a one-day charge to awaken, equip, and send out believers who are ready to make a real difference in the culture. Join me and Steve Dace, Megan Basham, Abby Johnson, Dr. George Grant, AJ Hurley, and more. Then the very next day, march shoulder to shoulder with us, the White Rose Resistance, at the March for Life on January 23rd in Washington, D.C. Now is the time to get involved in the culture war. There's never been a better time. It's going to be an amazing week of impact in D.C. Get your ticket today for Life or Death Con by going to lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon.com, and use code SETH, S-E-T-H, for 20% off your ticket. Aren't we generous? 20% off your ticket. Lifeordeathcon.com. See you in Washington, D.C. on January 22nd. We've talked about this on the show before. We had a whole conversation with Katie Faust about this. I have talked about this at length in my church sermons, in my church tour, Life or Death tour. Go back and listen to one of the sermons we posted. Okay? Most of the radical trans dudes who want to be women are actually, quote unquote, suffering from a self-induced condition called autogenophilia. And I call it self-induced because no one who lives by virtue and self-sacrifice, no dude who tries to live in accordance with the Creator's design is going to fantasize themselves carving out organs to make place for an abdomen, in their abdomen to make place for a uterus. Autogenophilia is a perverted sexual fetish where a man or woman gets off on fantasizing themselves to be the other gender. That's the best way to describe it. It's, however, far more pronounced in men who want to be women. It's always the viral clip of the hairy-chested dude wearing lipstick and nail polish who's making an infant suck on their nipple. Oh, this is too much. Seth, I don't like your rhetoric. You shouldn't talk like that. That's happening. Multiple viral clips. It's happening. That's a sexual fetish. And now, the radical Faustian scientists who want to remake human nature are attempting to transplant a woman's womb, her uterus, into a male's abdomen. Now, they've already successfully transplanted wombs from woman to woman, but they want to put uteruses in the abdomen area of a dude who's an autogenophile, so that he can literally replace woman. They want all of it. They want the full. Remember that show, Stranger Things? They want the full upside down. They want to go back to Genesis 1 through 3 and like literally flip it upside down. What did George Orwell say? In the end, the party would declare that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. It was inevitable that they should make this claim sooner or later. The logic of their worldview demanded it. The heresy of heresies was common sense. Now, man is woman, and woman is man. The patriarchy has found its way back through the feminists. How interesting, how interesting. This is actually what they want to do. So IVG is the greatest gift to the homo movement and the trans movement that you could possibly imagine. Not only do the trans cult members want to be women, they want to be pregnant with babies and nurse them. Never forget, in 2023, the Biden administration's FDA released official guidance and commands to healthcare providers to help autogenophilic, they didn't use that word though, men who want to be women to take a medication that would cause their male nipple to secrete a substance so that the infants that they've procured through third-party reproductive technologies can actually get some kind of sick liquid from the dude's nipple so they can feel like a mommy. No, I'm not reading you an updated modern version of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. That literally happened in 2023. The federal government's FDA said healthcare providers must do this. They must help the sexually perverted autogenophilic men who should be thrown in prison. By the way, let me put this about as clearly as I possibly can on this show. Okay, I don't know if I've really heard anyone else ever say this, actually, in the conservative movement. Autogenophilia always goes to pedophilia. Autogenophilia always goes to pedophilia. Men who get off sexually by fantasizing themselves to be women, who get off sexually fantasizing that they have a uterus, who get off by chopping off their male parts and constructing rudimentary surgically altered female genitals. Like, I'm sorry, this is happening in America right now. Okay? And who then force an infant to nurse, to suckle on their male tit. That is pedophilia. If an adult male forces a newborn infant to suckle on their nipple, then they are a pedophile. Autogenophilia will always end in pedophilia. So what is IVG going to lead to? And the researchers at OHSU are kind of winking at you, aren't they? Much remains to be done before the technique would be ready to establish a pregnancy in people. You can always tell a lot about someone by what they don't say. But sometimes you can tell a lot more about a person by what they do say and how they choose to say it. IVG will create a chilling future where countless embryos are manufactured so parents can choose the perfect child. Quote unquote, perfect child. Leaving all the others that aren't up to scruff, all of which are unique, distinct, living, whole human beings, to be discarded and killed. So now Pete Buttigieg can be both mother and father. Any gay couple can take one of their sperm, the other dude's skin cell, take the nucleus of the other gay dude's skin cell, and use somatic cell nuclear transfer to a female oocyte stripped of its nucleus, so that a female oocyte, an egg, has the DNA of the other sodomite. So it's a male chromosomed female egg that can then be gestated with the other gay dude's sperm, so they're both daddies. Literally, they would both biologically be the parent. No mother. By the way, what's one of the warning signs that we're going back to like demonic, like neo-paganism? When women and children's rights are stripped away. Yeah, that's right. You can thank Christianity for women's and children's rights. And by the way, this is why I every time J.K. Rowling goes after the trans stuff, I know she's not a Christian. Okay, there's something called co-belligerency. Get over it. She has more courage than most pastors in America. When she goes after this demonic trans cult, I cheer her. Because she recognizes and is making her arguments against this insanity based off of women's individual spaces, liberties, and rights. Not women's rights like killing babies. Like there are such a thing as women, and I don't want to see them erased. So buckle up. Here's IVG. Transplant a uterus into a dude's abdomen, take his sperm, then take the skin cell of his gay lover to create a male chromosomed female oocyte through somatic cell nuclear transfer, create a baby through IVG, then try to implant it into a female uterus that has been surgically transferred into a dude's body. So either the two gay dudes can both be parents, or a man who thinks he's a woman can go buy a female oocyte from a website. They call them egg donors, but there's no such thing as sperm or egg donors. Money always exchanges hands. And then he can use his own sperm or buy someone else's sperm to create the nucleus of the female oocyte. And then, listen, brave new world. Within 10 to 15 years, if nothing changes and people don't wake up, they will attempt to achieve implantation in a female womb that has been transplanted into a male's abdomen area. I am making a prediction right now on the Seth Gruber Show in October of 2025 that if nothing changes and people don't wake up and pass laws against all of this, they will attempt this in the next 10 to 15 years, probably less. What I don't even know what this means. I mean, orphans struggle with genealogical bewilderment when their parents die. Adoptees who were given away at birth, raised by adoptive parents, and find out that their legal parents are not their biological parents struggle with genealogical bewilderment. They want to know where they came from. What in the world does it mean when you're a human being who actually doesn't have a mother? Not because your mother died or gave you away, but because she never existed. The majority of children of adoption or donor conception report experiencing genealogical bewilderment or heightened psychological distress due to not knowing who their biological parents are. And all the studies have shown that this corresponds to increased risk for other negative emotional or social outcomes. It doesn't take an expert here, guys. We all grew up with the shows, the films, the movies of someone who goes on a journey to find their real parents. How many movies and shows have been made about a character who finds out that they're adopted as a child or teenager or young adult? And although they love the parents who raised them, they want to know where they came from. That's innate. That's part of our human nature. That's how we were designed. I mean, most human civilizations have been, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but have elevated the family to the point that all of the stories that were told were about your ancestors, whole family trees, whole family crests that were made that honored those who came before them. We know who we are to the degree that we know where we came from. That's true both in the spiritual realm, when you know the Father, but it's also true in the earthly sense, in the biological sense. And of course, the left, and I use that as a kind of a broad sweeping term, they always argue that there's no differences, right? Remember the phrase "any two will do"? It doesn't matter if it's a mom and a dad. It's just that any two will do. That's what they said. So 2 lesbians, 2 gay dudes, any two will do. And they always argued that those children turned out just as well or better than children raised by heterosexual married parents in a low conflict marriage. They've always said that. They've always pushed back against the data that children fare best in every sociological, economic, and moral category when raised by their married biological parents in a low conflict marriage living under the same house. They've always argued that no, those kids don't do any better. 2 lesbians are just as good, until you start talking to the kids who were raised by 2 mommies. And they're like, well, I love my mom and the other woman she was banging who raised me. I love them. But I always wanted to know who my father was. And of course, like CNN never has the children, adult children raised by 2 gays to talk about how damaging this was to them. The studies that allegedly show there's no difference in outcomes for children of same-sex parents are always skewed by non-random sampling, parental reporting, rather than actual child outcomes. Meanwhile, verified and peer-reviewed studies that do show significant negative outcomes for the children of same-sex parents get blasted in the mainstream media for being pseudoscience. And so the public largely doesn't know actually the data here. But one of the few large studies on the outcomes of donor-conceived children, super interesting, donor-conceived children, right? So like 2 gay dudes who get a woman's egg and then one of their sperms, IVF, and then they get a surrogate. That's donor conception. That would be one example of donor conception. It's called My Daddy's Name is Donor. Demonstrated that children conceived through sperm donation were more likely to struggle with their identity, to experience divorce and multiple family transitions in their families of origin, and suffer from substance abuse and depression. Many donor-conceived children express fear over the possibility of unknowingly dating or marrying a biological half-sibling or cousin. Ugh. Right, because if the 2 lesbians have to go get sperm, right? Watch this. But that sperm donor, who was some random college-age dude getting cash for his sperm, went to the clinic a lot of times, and a lot of different lesbians or infertile couples used that sperm from the sperm bank. So there's a bunch of babies getting created who all have the same biological father. So a donor-conceived kid learns that the two lesbians who raised me, or my mom and dad, but wait a second, my dad is not my dad because my mom used someone else's sperm because my dad who raised me has infertile. So now I'm out in the dating world, and how, my gosh, what if I'm dating my sibling? Do you see the wild, wild west that we're living in right now? All kids who didn't know their mother and father struggle with genealogical bewilderment. What in the world is IVG, in vitro gametogenesis, going to lead to in our culture and in our country and across the world, where this is going to start being normalized? We need to pass laws against this immediately. But first, we want to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company, America's pro-life, pro-family diaper company. It is insane that even to this day, so many of the woke corporations have not backed down from their disgusting wokeism and their love for abortion and gender-bending trans madness. Netflix is collapsing right now. Isn't that great? But notice how one of the only ways the left caves is to a huge display of power or to a huge loss of profit. And sometimes they're the same things. We fight against the culture of death in large measure through our wallet. What you give money to, you get more of. If you want to rebuild a culture of life, you cannot fund or subsidize a culture of death. If you're having babies, if your kids are having babies and you're a grandparent, or if the nursery at your church is getting diapers from Huggies or Coterie, stop it. Cut it out. All of these major diaper companies are pro-abortion. They actually celebrate abortion. They put all these social media posts up celebrating abortion. Many of them paid their employees to travel to blue states to kill their kids. You need to get your diapers, wipes, and baby shampoos from everylife.com. Use promo code Seth10, that's Seth10, Seth10 for 10% off your first order. Do the subscription model like my wife and I do, and it just arrives right on time. You get everything you need. No emergency runs for wipes or diapers. Everylife.com. Promo code Seth10, Seth10 for 10% off your first order, and let them know that we sent you. Thank you, Every Life. You know, China has been working for some time on artificial wombs. So robot wombs. They want to be able to achieve conception through IVF, which is easy enough, and implant embryos into artificial uteruses, artificial wombs. So women never have to give birth, which will just lead to factory farms of children who can be used to get their organs or whatever kind of insanity they want to do. One of the ways you know you're going back to demonic paganism is when women and children's rights are endangered or are the target of the culture once again. Christianity, through its foundational ideas of radical equality and infinite worth of every human being, Christianity essentially invented the cultural concept of children as treasured individuals. You and I take that for granted now, that kids are precious, they deserve to be protected. They have a right to be protected. We take that for granted. You can thank Christianity 2,000 years ago for starting to change how the culture viewed women and viewed children. So now it's just the particles in the air we breathe in, and we assume it's normal. It's not normal. What was normal was the strong survive. So men, and they can live however they want, regardless of how that harms women or children. Unlike the Greco-Roman world, where children were often viewed negatively as lacking reason, Christians began to hold up children, to elevate children as positive models, emphasizing their natural innocence, their simplicity, their unquestioning faith. This is how you read how Jesus talks about children. For to such belong the kingdom of heaven. For unless you become like one of these little ones, do not hinder them. It was Christian theology, including the radical equality of all people as children of God and Jesus' instruction to imitate children, to become like these little ones, that led to the practical changes in areas like abortion, child prostitution, the education of children, and the full inclusion of children in church life. That all goes directly back to Christianity. Not to the Greek and Roman philosophers, not to the ancient Roman world, but to Christianity and its theology and its precepts and its teachings. By the way, do you remember that shocking and disturbing article in MIT from April? We talked about it on the show here. It was called Ethically Sourced Spare Human Bodies Could Revolutionize Medicine. Ethically sourced spare human bodies could revolutionize medicine. Do you remember? Here's one sentence, two sentences from that article. They say, we have a severe shortage of ethically sourced human bodies. It may be disturbing to characterize human bodies in such commodifying terms, but the unavoidable reality is that human biological materials are an essential commodity in medicine, and persistent shortages of these materials create a major bottleneck to progress. We don't have enough human bodies to get organs from, to do tests with. We have a shortage. So, here comes IVG. It's okay. We don't even need women anymore. We don't need mothers. Just go to the sperm bank and then take one sperm and then take the other one and rip out its nucleus and put it in a female oocyte. Create conception. There you go. And with the looming future of artificial wombs and factory farms of children, no more shortage of human bodies. And they'll believe that these babies were ethically sourced because they paid the woman for her eggs, they paid the dude for his sperm, and after all, children aren't people anyways, right? And notice the language, the jump from bodies to materials that this MIT article from April that we talked about, right? They say that there's a shortage of ethically sourced human bodies. They say that the reality is that human biological materials are an essential commodity in medicine. Human biological materials, do you mean people? This is philosophical naturalism, materialism. Humans are nothing more than the sum of their parts. There's no spirit, there's no soul, there's no image of God, there's no dignity. There's no difference in value between the whole and the parts. So you can just chop things up and remove them, and they're not people anyways. This whole belief that real people are their thoughts or their consciousness. And so when there's no consciousness, when there's no self-awareness, there's no person. And because embryos are not developed enough to be self-aware or conscious, then I guess they're not people, so why not just create them in factory farms through IVF and IVG? And plus, we can then placate and cater to the autogynephilic pedophiles who want to have babies, and they can claim biological identity with the kids or the two gay dudes or Pete Buttigieg and his husband. There has never been a greater looming threat since Roe versus Wade to children's rights than third-party reproductive technologies and its most disgusting and demonic newest iteration, IVG, in vitro gametogenesis. Remember, this author said, nature has given us two methods of cell division and we just developed a third. We're tinkering with human nature. We shall be as gods, or as Margaret Sanger said, no gods, no masters. Which is another way of saying, I'm the only God. I'm the only master. Who was it that said the welfare of humanity is always the alibi of tyrants? Of course, this is pitched as being good for humanity, for progress. But those who will run roughshod over the weakest and the most vulnerable, women and children, will not stop there. One of the founders said it is the madness of folly to expect mercy from those who have refused to do justice. It is the madness of folly to expect mercy from those who have refused to do justice. This is one of the greatest injustices. Intentionally creating motherless children so that the gays can be both mommy and daddy. Think of the kind of societal effect that's going to have if they perfect this technology and develop a baby whose chromosomes come from two dudes and is raised or gestated and birthed and raised literally without a mother at all. The feminists should be in an uproar. The erasure of women. We've done episodes on how feminism actually brought us to this point, but you would think this would piss them off. This is one of the greatest assaults on the family that I've ever seen, because it has to do with marriage, parenting, gender, and the right to life. All of those issues are wrapped up in IVG. If ever we needed the prophetic voice of the church to preach truth against lies, light against darkness, to declare war on these demonic ideologies for the glory of King Jesus and the protection of babies and children, it's this issue. You heard it here first, probably. Hopefully you heard it somewhere else first. This article just came out at the, actually I have it right here. The very, very, very last day of September. Just a week and a half ago. They've already created babies without a mother. They've only survived to 8 days, and they want to implant them and gestate them to birth. China will jump all over this, by the way. This will be a perfect addition to their goal to create factory farms of artificial robot wombs. Share this episode. Pray against this demonic agenda. And you know what? Send it to your pastor. We need the shepherds of the land to preach against this kind of stuff, because most people are not going to talk about this. Even the Trump administration, remember Trump called himself the big daddy of IVF. He loves this now. You're probably not going to hear good commentary from a Christian perspective on this from too many places. Send this to your pastor. Go sign up for Life or Death Con. Life or Death Con, January 22nd, 2026, the day before the March for Life. We'll be talking about this and so much more. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.